Resuming debate, reprise de débat, the Honourable Member for the Northwest Territories.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to rise today to speak to S-5, a bill creating Nááts'ihch'oh National Park in the Sahtu Region of the Northwest Territories, a region that is centered around the Mackenzie River but stretches towards the Yukon boundary with the incredible, beautiful mountain range with the magnificent wilderness that is the Northwest Territories throughout the whole North. I represent the Northwest Territories. I represent people who have some of the highest regard for the environment when polled among all those in Canada. We really have that respect, and the respect for the idea of national parks is strong in the Northwest Territories. We've seen the creation of many national parks over many years throughout our territory. We understand the inherent issues that surround the development of national parks. Our First Nations people have had experience in dealing with the parks bureaucracies, understand how the issues of national parks and their rules and regulations sometimes intervene with their traditional lifestyle. They have agreed, the Sahtu Dene have agreed to this park, and they have agreed to a comprehensive and cooperative management system that goes along with it, and we look forward to seeing more details of that in committee, where we can understand how their interests will be protected over the time forward. I'm very pleased to see this beautiful area protected. However, I'm not happy that the Conservatives chose the smallest size possible for the park. Through the process of developing this park, there were three options that were set out for the park. The option one, with a total area of 6,450 square kilometers, was developed to best protect conservation values while providing an open area around the existing mineral interests. Option two, with a total area of 5,770 square kilometers, diminished the achievement of conservation goals and allowed more mineral potential to be available. Option three, and this is the one chosen by the Conservatives, was the smallest proposal with a total area of 4,840 square kilometers. It took advantage of the mineral potential within the proposed park reserve while providing some protection to key values. They made this choice despite option one, 6,450 square kilometers, getting the overwhelming support, 92.3% of those who indicated a preference during public consultations on the proposed park. So the people of the North said, look, we're fine with the park. We want to make sure that the park works for the resources and the values that are being included within it. This has not been done completely with this park. This is not surprising, Mr. Speaker, because the many on that side of the House who see national parks as a waste of land and resources. For example, the member for Markham Oak Ridges has publicly stated that Parks Canada staff are not the best stewards of Canada's lands. When a national park was proposed for part of his riding, he responded, "We're going to have to do whatever we can to prevent it." He quickly changed his tune, however, when his bosses here in Ottawa told him he should be in favor of the Rouge National Urban Park. Well, that's a small park. I mean, that's a park that absolutely has some value within any person's purview for the urban residents of Canada. Mr. Speaker, the belief that parks are a waste of land and resources is just plain wrong. National parks create long-term sustainable jobs and opportunities in tourism and support industries. These jobs and economic opportunities last forever, unlike those in the resource sector, extraction, which only last a few years. And we're very familiar with those. Sometimes they leave a legacy of destruction, like the giant mines, that lasts for eternity. So we have to be very careful with how we deal with land. We know that in the Northwest Territories. We understand what goes on with with development, and we understand why we have to preserve land and why it's important that that land is put aside. Recently I had the opportunity to travel to Yukon's Kluane National Park and Reserve. There, Parks Canada has worked with the Champagne and Asiatic First Nations to create a visitor centre at the Daku Cultural Centre in Haines Junction. This centre and the numerous businesses in Haines Junction all exist because of Kluane National Park and Reserve. Like other national parks, Kluane has created jobs and economic opportunities that are long-lasting and environmentally sound. However, it seems to me that to these conservatives, many times tourism jobs and economic opportunities that surround that type of activity are of little value because they put the money not in the hands of big corporations, but in the hands of little people, local people, workers, and those that actually want to see a future for preservation of our natural beauty and such like. Is this the reason why the Conservatives chose the smallest size against the recommendations of all the people that chose to make those recommendations in the public consultations? Mr. Speaker, the tourist industry, now I want to talk about the tourism industry because this is what really will give the economic opportunities to the Sahtu region from putting aside 4,850 square kilometers of land. The tourism opportunities are one of the great potentials for our future. Provide local jobs, they provide local businesses, as with Kluane, and Kluane has been done in a very good fashion. It took years to get there. It took many difficult negotiations with First Nations so they actually achieved benefits, but now they are. So we don't want to make those mistakes with any new national park. We want to move to the good side as quickly as possible. The tourist industry in Canada, though, creates more than $84 billion in economic activity, more than $17 billion in export revenue, nearly $10 billion in federal revenue, and employs more than 600,000 Canadians. Tourism contribution to the GDP is worth more than agriculture, fisheries, and forestry combined. Despite these figures, the Conservatives have turned their backs on Canadian tourist operators. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce has ranked the lack of support for our tourism industry as one of the top 10 barriers to the competitiveness of the Canadian economy. Canada, during the reign of the Conservatives, has cut its tourism marketing budget by 20% over the last 9 years. So instead of expanding the budget, as should be, inflation and all the rest, we've seen a cutback of 20%. It's forced the Canadian Tourism Commission to abandon advertising initiatives in lucrative markets like the United States. The Canadian Tourism Commission's core funding has declined from nearly $100 million in 2001. The Conservative government's continued lack of leadership in promoting tourism at home and abroad is needlessly damaging what was once a good news story for the Canadian economy. A quick look at other countries shows just how little the Conservatives support the tourism industry. And those results are showing in the incredible drop that we've seen in tourism, international tourism visitations to Canada. In countries where they have put the money in Ireland, Ireland spends $211 million a year in promoting its tourism. That's a 14% increase in the same time. Mexico, $153 million, 4% increase. Australia, $147 million, 30% increase. France, Canada, $72 million. That's down 10% over that same period. So in the time when you factor in inflation, you've seen a massive decrease in the support for tourism industry. Well, you know, there's an old saying, and this is one that the neoliberals like, the rising tide raised all the boats. Well, what we see in the tourism industry is a falling tide has becalmed the industry and left a lot of tourism boats stranded on the shore. So when we talk about increasing national parks, we want to talk about expanding tourism. What operator is going to go in and create a new market in Canada for a new product when the Conservative government has decimated our tourism market in this country, where the Conservative government has refused to put the dollars into it that can return and promote and increase this a very important market. They're very content to see the tide go out and the boats sit on the sandy floor of the bay.
They lose interest.
They lose. So, Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives changed the tourism tax rebate, so only those on package tours can apply for a tax refund, rather than the old system where any visitor to Canada could get their GST refunded. This change has really hit small tourism businesses, but provided an unfair advantage to large tourism operators. So what's going to happen in the Northwest Territories? We have small tourist operators. Everybody in the tourist industry starts out small. The average time to make a tourist business profitable is between 10 and 14 years. Someone has to invest. They have to create the market. They have to create the product. They have to create the market. They have to make it work. That's what's going to have to happen in Nááts'ihch'oh. That's where we're going to have to put the investment in order to get the tourism industry to work there. So we need the support of the federal government on the federal programs that increase the volume of tourists to Canada. That's a fundamental. And I have included this in my speech because we want to see benefits from taking 4,850 square kilometers of land and creating a national park, which is a great idea for the people of Canada and can be a great idea for the people of the North, but we need to promote tourism. But you know, there's another story about tourism with this government and how little it supports it, and that's their treatment of Parks Canada. In budget 2012, Parks Canada saw eliminated 638 positions. Many of the positions in national parks and in the Northwest Territories, in Nunavut and Yukon, were lost as well during that time. So when we're trying to build a tourism industry based on natural beauty, national parks, we see that the cutbacks affect that throughout the system. Budget 2012 cut Parks Canada budget by almost 7.1%. The cuts hit parks and historic sites nationwide. Nova Scotia's Fortress of Louisbourg, touted by the Canadian Tourism Association as a signature destination, is facing the loss of 120 jobs. Banff National Park, another prime tourist destination, is losing 40 jobs. Winter services have been eliminated, and visitors are left to guide themselves at historic sites. We've even cut out cross-country ski trail building, one activity that could be guaranteed in national parks throughout northern Canada, was that we could have cross-country ski events. No more. Budget 2014 included $391 million allocated over 5 years, allowing the agency to improve roads, bridges, and dams located in Canada's national parks and historic canals. However, 2014 budget specifies that only $1 million is allocated for this fiscal year and $4 million for 2015-16, with the rest to be handed out in 2016 and onward after the next election. It is estimated by Parks Canada, the reports, the cost could be as much as $2.7 billion to complete all deferred infrastructure programs. So, Mr. Speaker, we're happy that we see an agreement between the Sahtu Dene and Métis and this government to create a national park reserve, Nááts'ihch'oh. This is a good thing, but it can't stand by itself. Efforts have to be made to create a situation where what the parliamentary secretary talked about, the economic opportunities, the jobs, the local economy that can come out of a national park can actually flourish. And that is linked to tourism. And without the effort put into that, without the effort put into Parks Canada to provide it with the resources to promote tourism, without the effort put in by Canadian Tourism Commission, without the resources to advertise, to promote Canada worldwide, we won't see an increase in our tourism. We will continue this downward trend. This beautiful country, with so much to offer to so many people around the world, is not getting its due right now. We're spending all kinds of money promoting oil and gas industry throughout trying to do the work for multinational corporations that should do their own work because they're making massive profits from these resources. Yep. What do we do for the tourism people? What do we do for those little people that are trying so hard to set up small businesses, to set up the opportunities for people to work in this field? What are we doing? We're cutting back on the resources that are available to promote this very, very important sector. As I pointed out, agriculture, forestry, and fishing combined don't match up to the impact that tourism has on our economy. We want to be successful in the Northwest Territories. We want our people to have an opportunity to take advantage of the natural beauty of our country and the land. We want our First Nations who have gone into agreements to be able to invest in business and opportunities in the tourism sector. That is the real growth potential for the national parks in the Northwest Territories. But this government has shown that it's not interested in that. Perhaps after the next election we'll have another government. It looks likely. At that time, we perhaps can see that the true potential of the Canadian National Park System, including all those in the Northwest Territories, will have an opportunity to grow for the people in that region that have given up so much to provide these beautiful national parks to Canada for eternity, will have their opportunity to achieve a prosperous lifestyle from doing that. It will be hard. There's nothing easy about the tourism industry. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes resources. But it also takes the active participation of the Government of Canada in promoting Canada as a destination. We can't back off from that. We can't say, oh, that's not so important. Well, let's just leave that to the private sector. That doesn't work. This is our country. We have to make the best opportunities for it. We can't simply continue to cut the opportunities that exist there to show the world what we have here. So, well, we're getting, and I appreciate this. I really hope that the Conservatives this time follow up on their and have an active plan to get the facilities in place. I mean, we saw in 7 years with the Nahanni Park expansion. We were promised 7 years ago that these facilities would be built. A proper visitor center in Fort Simpson. This is the Nahanni National Park is a World Heritage Site. It is famous around the world. Yet you go to Fort Simpson and there's absolutely nothing there to sell somebody on getting in a plane and flying all the way out there to take a look at it. There's nothing there. There's nothing that's been put in place yet after 7 years. That's a shocking record. That's a record of ineffective behavior. That's a record of not understanding how to get along with First Nations to accomplish that. That's where that sits in the Nahanni National Park expansion plans. And so I trust that there's someone on the other side that might be listening to this and understanding that there's work to be done here. This is not all just clapping our hands at the wonderful things that the government has created. The government hasn't created anything. You've taken land and put it aside. We need now the work to go in to make it into something. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.